Good evening, everyone. Today, I will be discussing Lesson 7.1 under Module 7, Outcome-Based Education for Teacher Preparation Curriculum. Before we proceed to the main topic, let's have first the definition of Outcome-Based Education, OBE. W. Spady, 1994, defined OBE as clearly focusing and organizing everything in the educational system around the essential for all the students to do successfully at the end of their learning experiences. This definition clearly points to the desired result of education, which are the learning outcomes. To simply put, it is education based on outcome. Learning outcomes are made up of knowledge, understanding, skills, and attitudes that students should acquire to make them reach their full potential and lead fulfilling lives as individuals in the community and at work. To define and clarify further, answers to the following questions should be addressed by the teachers. What do we want the students to learn? Why do we want students to learn these things? How can we best help students to learn these things? How will you know when the students have learned? Letting your students know what they will be learning and doing in class will help keep them more engaged and on track. A teacher can share their lesson plan by writing a brief agenda on the board or telling students explicitly what they will be learning in doing class. We can outline on the board or hand out the learning objectives for the class. Spady premised that in outcomes-based education, all students can learn and succeed, but not at the same time or in the same way. This means that not every student a teacher has in class is going to enjoy and understand what they are teaching. Anyone can learn almost anything given enough time, effort, and explanatory materials. However, they may not be able to execute what they learn or display extraordinary mastery of the subject, especially involving creative extensions to the knowledge base. Successful learning promotes even more successful learning, and schools and teachers control the conditions that will determine if the students are successful in school learning. All students have talent, and it is the job of schools to develop it. The role of schools is to find ways for students to succeed rather than finding ways for students to fail. In order to comply with the three premises, 4 essential principles should be followed in either planning instruction, teaching, and assessing learning. The first principle is the clarity of focus. A clear focus on what teachers want students to learn is the primary principle in OBE. Teachers should bear in mind that the outcome of teaching is learning. That means that all curriculum design, all instructional delivery, all assessment design is geared to what we want the kids to demonstrate successfully at the real end, not just the end of the week, the end of the semester, the end of the year, but at the end of their time with us. Thus, when teachers plan and teach, they should focus on helping learners to develop the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that will enable them ultimately to achieve significant outcomes that have been clearly expressed. This principle obligates teachers to make both their short-term and long-term intentions for student learning clear to the learners at every stage of the teaching process. It also obligates teachers to focus all student assessment on clearly defined significant outcomes. Next, the second principle is designing backgrounds. This principle is related to the first. At the beginning of a curriculum design, the learning outcome has to be clearly defined. What to achieve at the end of formal schooling is determined at the beginning. It is inextricably linked to the first principle. It means that the starting point for all curriculum design must be a clear definition of the significant learning that students are to achieve by the end of their formal education. All instructional decisions are then made by tracing back from this desired end result and identifying the building blocks of learning that students must achieve in order to eventually reach the long-term outcomes. This does not mean that curriculum design is a simple linear process, but it does mean that all planning, teaching and assessment decision should be linked directly to the significant outcomes that students are ultimately to achieve. High expectations. Establishing high expectations, challenging standards of performance will encourage students to learn better. This is linked to the premise that successful learning promotes more successful learning. Teachers must establish high, challenging standards of performance in order to encourage students to engage deeply with the issues about which they are learning. When students experience success, it reinforces their learning, builds their confidence, and encourages them to accept further learning challenges. One of the most important reasons for using OBE is that it can help all learners do difficult things well. The last principle is expanded opportunities. In OBE, all students are expected to excel, hence equal expanded opportunities should be provided. As advocates of multiple intelligences say, every child has a genius in him, herself, hence is capable of doing the best. This principle is based on the idea that not all learners can learn the same thing in the same way and in the same time. However, most students can achieve high standards if they are given appropriate opportunities. What really matters is that students learn the things that are important, not that they learn them in a particular way or by some arbitrary point in time. It is obvious that traditional ways of organizing school do not make it easy for teachers to provide expanded opportunities for all learners. However, the practical difficulties of providing expanded opportunities must be weighed against the long-term benefits of enabling all learners to be successful. Let's come now in our next topic, which is the teaching learning in OBE. Teaching is teaching if learners learn. Learning is measured by its outcome. Whatever approach to teaching is used, the intent should focus on learning rather than on teaching. Subjects do not exist in isolation, but links between them should be made. It is important that students learn how to learn, hence a teacher should be innovative. How then should teaching learning be done in OBE? Here are some tips. Teachers must prepare students adequately. This can be done if the teachers know what they want the students to learn and what learning outcomes to achieve. Prerequisite knowledge is important. Thus, a review is necessary at the start of a lesson. Teachers must create a positive learning environment. Students should feel that regardless of individual uniqueness, the teacher is always there to help. Teacher and student relationship is very important. The classroom atmosphere should provide respect for diverse kind of learners. Teachers must help their students to understand what they have to learn, why they should learn it, what use it will be now and in the future, and how will they know that they have learned. Teachers must use a variety of teaching methods. The most appropriate strategy should be used taking into account the learning outcome teachers want the students to achieve. Also to consider are the contents, the characteristic of the students, the resources available, and the teaching skill of the teacher. Even if OBE is learner-centered, sometimes more direct, time-tested methods of teaching will be appropriate. Teachers must provide students with enough opportunities. It is to use the new knowledge and skills that they gain. When students do this, they can explore with new learning, correct errors, and adjust their thinking. Application of learning is encouraged rather than mere accumulation of this. Teacher must help students to bring each learning to a personal closure that will make them aware of what they learned. Here are additional key points in teaching learning in OBE which show the shifts from a traditional to an OBE view. From instruction to learning, from inputs and resources to learning outcomes, from knowledge is transferred by the teacher to knowledge already exists in the minds of the learners, from teacher dispenses knowledge to teachers are designers of methods, from teachers and students are independent and in isolation to teacher and students work in teams. Let's come now in assessment of learning outcomes in OBE. Assessment in OBE should also be guided by the 4 principles of OBE, which are clarity of focus, designing backwards, high expectations, and expanded opportunity. It should contribute to the objective of improving students' learning. Since in OBE, there is a need first to establish a clear vision of what the students are expected to learn, the desired learning outcome, then assessment becomes an embedded part of the system. To be useful in OBE system, assessment should be guided by the following principles. First, assessment procedure should be valid. Procedure and tools should actually access what one intends to test. Second, the assessment procedure should be reliable. The results should be consistent. Third, assessment procedure should be fair. Cultural background and other factors should not influence assessment procedure. Fourth, assessment should reflect the knowledge and skills that are important to the students. Fifth, assessment should tell both the teachers and students how students are progressing. Sixth, assessment should support every student's opportunity to learn things that are important. Seventh, assessment should allow individuality or uniqueness to be demonstrated. And lastly, assessment should be comprehensive to cover a wide range of learning outcomes. Learners' responsibility for learning. In OBE, students are responsible for their own learning and progress. Nobody can learn for the learner. It is only the learner himself or herself who can drive himself or herself to learn. Thus, learning is a personal matter. Teachers can only facilitate that learning, define the learning outcomes to be achieved, and assist students to achieve those outcomes. One of the great benefits of outcome-based education is that it makes students aware of what they should be learning, why they are learning it, what they are actually learning, and what they should do when they are learning. All of this will conclude with the achieved learning outcomes. In terms of students' perspectives, there are common questions that will guide them as they learn under the OBE curriculum framework. To guide the students in OBE learning, they should ask themselves the following questions. What do I have to learn? Why do I have to learn it? What will I be doing while I am learning? How will I know that I am learning what I should be learning? Will I have any say in what I learn? How will I be assessed? To end my report, here's a quotation from Andy Hargreaves. The rules of the world are changing. It is time for the rules of teaching and teachers' work to change with them. If you stay focused on the goals you wanted to achieve, you will become more and more successful in applying them. And more of your students will be achieving the outcomes you value. That would be all. Thanks. Keep safe, everyone. God bless us all.